few weeks ago, I finished reading Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, written in 1719. And I went to the trouble of reading it, so I thought I'd make a quick video on it. It's not going to be a long one, just wanted to mention a few things about it. So, the first thing I wanted to mention, it's a good book, I recommend it. It wasn't like super standout for me, 3, maybe 4 stars out of 5. So definitely a good book. It was not forgettable by any stretch of the imagination, but it wasn't like a read of the year or anything like that. But it's famous for a good reason, right? And so basically the plot is, this video will have spoilers in it, so brace yourselves. So basically the plot is this guy named Robinson Crusoe. He's living at home, growing up, kind of feeling restless, and then he decides to go out and try his luck on the seas. And his dad warns him many times not to go, and he just disregards his dad's advice. And then at sea, he just meets misfortune after misfortune, and eventually is shipwrecked on this island off the coast of South America. And he actually gets quite lucky, and this is something I like about Robinson Crusoe. I think that like in a lot of these survival novels, they just drag the character through the mud, right? Like they're just getting so unlucky. And in this book, Robinson actually gets quite lucky. There are many things from the ship he's able to salvage that become quite useful to him. He doesn't make a bunch of bonehead moves that make the reader like smack their head and like, oh, I could have done that way better. No, actually this guy's quite resourceful and he does quite well, which is something I think was a fresh change from a lot of other survival style novels or movies. So that was great. Another major theme throughout the novel was this idea of providence. Now, Robinson Crusoe, of course, it's 1719. He grows up in a Christian house. Everyone in Europe does at this time, pretty much. But he isn't really a practicing Christian. Throughout much of the novel, he's kind of more of like a jock type, is what we would think of nowadays. Of course, they didn't really have jocks, I guess, back then. But he was more of like a rough and tumble guy. Like he enjoyed being at sea until, of course, he got shipwrecked. But he was more of a blue collar guy, I guess we would think of nowadays. And he didn't really think too much about Christianity. He was kind of just happy with working and drinking booze or whatever. I don't even know. I don't think he actually drinks that much in the novel. But the author doesn't portray him as a simpleton. But yeah, he's just not particularly pious. But after several near-death experiences at sea and then also on the island, he begins to see God's hand in his life. And this is predominantly sparked not just by the near-death experiences, but also having recovered a Bible from the ship. And he doesn't read it right away, but he gets around to it eventually. And after reading the scriptures, he starts to begin to see, like God's hand at work in his life and sparing him and giving him all the supplies that he was able to salvage. Kind of sees it all as like a big gift from God, right? And over the long period of time he's on the island, right? Like it covers almost his whole life. Like he's on the island like 28 years or something like that. He sort of slowly regains his faith and becomes a very pious Christian, and eventually like converts some of the natives that he meets there as well. And he even goes so far as to consider his isolation on the island as God's providence, right? Because without those near-death experiences, he wouldn't have come back to faith, right? God knew that it required that dire of a circumstance to make him realize the need that everyone has for faith in God, right? And he just learns to be happy for what he's given, which I think is like a good life lesson that I took away from the novel, is that no matter how bad things seem, they could always be worse. So just remember that every good gift comes from the Father. So I think that was a good takeaway. Yeah, Robinson Crusoe, good book. If you like seafaring adventures and surviving against the odds, I'd recommend you read it. See you next time.